Hey team, welcome back to the show. Today it is Coach Andrea and I. We're going to be talking about ab training today. This will be a fun topic, just really talking through our current thoughts on ab training, how we approach it with clients, potentially with ourselves, and just new, different things we might be doing there. I feel like this is something that over time I've really evolved my thought process on a lot. I mean, there's like the hey, abs are just made in the kitchen line of thinking, which you hear a lot. And I think that, like, when we're looking at ab training, like, the takeaway from that, yes, like, a lot of people do just need to get leaner to see their abs. But as someone gets to be more advanced, I think that it actually does become a lot more important. And a lot of people neglect their ab training and don't have the abs they want because they actually need to be training them more and better. But we'll get into that in a moment. Before we discuss the topic, Andrea, anything new going on with you this week to fill us in on?
Only a couple weeks out now from my photo shoot, so food dropped down a little bit. I think it was last week, I did a refeed, like a higher carb refeed. Um, Nothing like what your higher carb refeed was, but like relative to what I've been doing. And then for 2 weeks, I've just been holding at the same number and finally dropped down a couple pounds today, which was nice to see. Um, but even I mean I was able to tell I've been getting a little bit leaner, but
Right.
it is just nice to see. I don't necessarily, I'm not holding too tight to the number that I hit, but I have had that like 140 number in my mind. And so I don't know.
It's
I
not just
wanted
about your scale weight,
I
Andrea.
know I
Your
want to
goal
get there
physique's going to
though
be
because I've
heavier than
had
your
it.
goal weight.
But it is also I was like 142 and a half, which is basically the same number that I've hit the last couple of fat loss phases. So that's kind of cool because there's a very big visual difference
Oh,
at this
yeah.
weight now versus the last couple of times I was there. Um so I know like it's the same weight I was at for my photo shoot the first time. So it'll be cool to compare the difference in the physique from now until then.
Yeah, you have a ton of muscle now. Really cool to see. I feel like
Still
you've
no
hit
bicep vein, but
still no
maybe some
bicep vein.
maybe someday I can like I have I'm not super vascular, but I have like forearm
Yeah.
veins that are pretty pronounced, and then like the shoulder where it should go down into my bicep, and even like training biceps, it doesn't. I think it's underneath my muscle. It's like on my bone.
It's actually attached to your bone instead.
Yeah.
It's they wrote a story about it in the local newspaper. Uh, that is a it is an interesting thing though. I mean, I've for sure gotten way more vascular over the last couple of years, but it is also, I mean, I've noticed lately, like, uh, people talk about like being depleted or flat, and like Kyle, my coach, talks about that a lot as well. Like, yeah, like, oh, we're super depleted, we're super flat right now, which is part of like why we use those refeeds and whatnot. But I feel like been really interesting to go through this fat loss phase because it's cool to actually and then like go through like the aggressive refeeds like that because it's really interesting to actually see like I've never been able to see such big visual differences in just like, oh wow, I genuinely can see like a much bigger difference in not just like my vascularity but like the amount of muscle tissue it looks like I have when it's like we're really depleted, we've been digging for a long time versus we carb backed up, my glycogen stores are full, my muscle glycogen is full. That's been really interesting to see. But that's the same thing right now, honestly, where like uh I'm like very lean, but I don't feel like again it's just super depleted. Now our plan is it sounds like our plan is both Saturday and Sunday this week to do like two of those refeed days back to back, which will be
Okay.
fun. And I imagine things would be a lot different after that. But yeah, I'm like the same right now. I have like my like lower ab veins really starting to come through nicely, so I know like when I feed back up, like bicep veins and whatnot will be there. But
Hmm.
right now, not a lot going on. I also don't feel like I'm like in the mirror. I feel like I wear like sleeves when I train and stuff a lot more than I used to. And I'm not really like in front of the mirror as much, so I also just don't feel like you notice that as much as I used to.
Yeah. Yeah. It'll be cool to see how that goes with two back-to-back refeed days because I know he wanted to do that last time, but you were going on your trip, so it didn't make
Mhm.
any sense. So that'll be cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Anything else on your end?
No,
Photo shoot is coming right up here though. Excited
yep,
for
coming
it.
right up. Um, I told Natalie earlier, I feel like I have kind of hit a wall with energy, which it probably will just pick back up. But
Hmm.
even if it doesn't, I'm only 2 weeks out. So
Yeah.
next week will be like a peak week, and I'm really interested to see what that looks like. Um, but I imagine I will be training a little bit less with a little less intensity, and I don't know. We'll see if I have more food or not. Maybe not. But either way, I talked about last week, like ready for a deload. I think it'll be either next week or the following week. So
Yeah. I would imagine y'all will probably just hold off to a peak week and that'll kind of be the deal. But I'm interested to see what that approach ends up looking like.
yeah, I have a call with her to talk about what that'll be. I know
Oh, cool.
I've seen I've picked up from social media. I think her athletes before a show do an ice bath. So I'm hoping that that is left out whenever it comes to a photo shoot.
Just to like drop inflammation.
Uh-huh. Yeah. That would be the worst part of all of it. I would rather do all the cardio and be hungry than do an ice bath.
You're not
So
in ice baths.
no, I've never. Well, I probably did one in like high school or college, but I no, it's not a voluntary thing for me.
Yeah, I feel like I go like jump in our pool and stuff in the mornings, and like it was pretty
Oh
chilly in like
yeah.
January. Like I'll like turn my water cold at the end, but I feel like what I have realized is I'm really kind of out of touch with like what actual cold water feels like. Like when
Yeah.
we go back to Nebraska and I turn like the shower cold, it's like, oh wow, this is a lot worse than it normally is. Like don't know if I want to do this for as long as I normally do, or
Yeah.
like
I did
even
do a
if
polar bear plunge. I just remembered that where you like go jump in the lake in January.
Mhm.
Forgot all about that. That was
Then like swam
basically a nice bath. Huh?
and like swam.
I mean, you just kind of like run out and submerge yourself in the water and then run back out.
Okay, okay, but in like Bentonville.
This was in Branson, Missouri,
Oh, I
in
love
January, so
Branson.
it gets pretty
Silver
cold.
Dollar City, that's my spot.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
love Silver Dollar City, actually. That's where our next team retreat should be.
Yeah, yeah, that would be funny. I
Um,
feel like Natalie would, that seems like right up her alley. Similar vibes as the Renaissance Fair.
I know, I feel like it would get taken too far, so
We would definitely have to do the pictures with the dress and the
yeah,
gun.
we'd have to like dress up as pioneers.
Yeah.
Silver Dollar City is the best though. But, like I like have so many good childhood memories from there. Anyways, uh, anything else on your end?
No.
On my end, yeah. Let's see, week back now from the trip. I talked about how my weight dropped down to like 212, 213-ish, and I have stayed, I've really kind of stayed right there. This fat loss phase especially though has been cool because I feel like it's been cool to see how detached I've been able to be from the scale. Which I think like we talk about with clients all the time, but it's not easy like you do like in your head if like things aren't moving. And I feel like this phase is the first one where I've been like, it just doesn't, I don't even think about it, it's just like another data point, but I like fully trust, like, oh, I can see myself getting leaner. I can like see all these visual changes, and I don't know what makes it different
Well, when you
than
get lean enough, that becomes a lot easier to see.
true.
When you're not quite as lean, you're kind of relying on that scale. Because when you had 20 more pounds of, or let's say you had 20 more pounds of body fat, losing one of those or two of those isn't really a visual shift at all. But at this
Yeah.
point, if you lose 1 or 2 pounds of fat, you can see it and you can be like, okay, well, the scale doesn't matter because I can visually see that I'm leaner.
Yeah, that's a very good point. That's something I always try to express to clients as well. Like, we might not, this, if we're as focused on the scale, it's going to feel less rewarding because like you losing even a pound now, that's a ton. That's like a much greater percentage of your overall weight and body fat than it was before, but also much bigger visual difference. That's a good point though. Yeah. And it definitely is like I can see like every couple days, I can still see the visual changes. Especially like legs, lower ab area seems to really be coming through. So been happy with that again. But really kind of just stayed stable there. Sounds like we're going to be pushing again those two refeeds on Saturday, Sunday, which I will say like my training is actually there were a couple weeks there I wasn't feeling as good, but it was my sleep was just jacked up from like trip to Portugal, getting back, jet lag, and like my sleep was jacked up. But then like I thrown together and get really, really good sleep in my last two training days. I just felt like a different person. We have also though, I haven't even done any of the new training sessions yet, but we changed my training up just a little bit. Um, Dropped some of my rep ranges down, changed up my exercise selection just slightly. I think like to as we wrap up the fat loss phase to make sure like from a fatigue management perspective we're at a good place. So I'm interested to dig into that a little bit more. But let's go ahead and get into the topic at hand. So again, just chatting through ab training, just kind of our updated thoughts, anything different we might be doing. So first, I wanted to, and this is something that you really put me onto. I've implemented it with a few clients as well, but I wanted to talk through stomach vacuums. Um, First, can you explain like what a stomach vacuum is and why we might apply it to clients?
Yeah, so a stomach vacuum, it's different than sucking your stomach in because what you're doing first is blowing all of your air out. And especially if you can do like a shh, like that shush type of breath out, that helps engage your TVA. And then once your breath is all the way out, then you draw your core in and basically like think about coming back and up with your belly button, like you're trying to touch your spine with your belly button. And then you hold it until you can't hold your breath any longer, and then you have to breathe and reset. So,
So you're basically like pulling your, like it was, I had never, sorry for interrupting. I
no,
never
that's
even
okay.
thought about this very much. Like I know like some bodybuilders did it, and it was really because you were the first like more, I mean, at the time you weren't like into like bodybuilding or anything all that much. And you were the first person who really like I had kind of heard talk about that all that much. And it was like when you our last team meetup, it was still crazy to me. Like you, I feel like it was like, dude, how are you? It's crazy how much because basically what you are doing, as you said, you can do it kneeling. What like a kneeling would be the like on your hands and knees would be the easiest very or on your back,
On your back,
right?
yeah, because then you're like all your organs are in there, and it takes the gravity component away.
So we could do like lying, kneeling, and then standing would be like the progression, right? But basically, like yes, you're exhaling, really pulling your belly button as close to your spine as you can. But it is crazy to like watching you do it, where it's like, dude, that's like just crazy how much I don't know. It's wild to see. But anyways, I'm
Yeah, I
sorry.
think a
Go
lot
on.
of people think of it as like the vacuum pose for bodybuilders
Hmm.
because they'll pull like a crazy vacuum on stage as part of their posing. But you can also just do those for a maximum hold time
Right.
and what you're doing is you're training your transverse abdominis, which is like underneath the six pack muscles. So we have the rectus abdominis on top that you think about as abs, like the blocks, and then underneath that is your transverse abdominis, which is people will say it's like an internal corset. It kind of supports supports you. It's like part of when you think about training your core for injury prevention or stability. That's a large part of it. But it draws your waist in tighter because you're strengthening that internal corset, and it just gives you better control. Basically, like I'm losing the words that I'm trying to say right now, but like a just abdominal control because if you kind of like let loose everything, like if you've ever stood in the mirror and just like completely relax your abs, or at least I do, maybe it's from having babies, I look like I'm pregnant, but normally you have just that little bit of tension and control with your core, and then you can like tighten that in further, so it improves that abdominal control that you have. And And so why you would do those, I think that they could be helpful for anybody. I don't really program them a ton, which I know we'll get into, except for special situations. But if you've already gone through all of the rehab process for your core and pelvic floor after pregnancy, and you know that there's no diastasis or any reason that you shouldn't be doing them, then I really like to use those with moms because your transverse abdominis is really stretched out throughout a pregnancy. And if you never train that again, then there's just going to be a little bit more laxity than there was beforehand.
Yeah, it really is pretty crazy though. Like again, you were the one who introduced me to this, and there was one of my clients where like, hey, you said, hey, you should try this with her. I think it'd be beneficial.
Mm-hmm.
And I have started with a lot of clients who, and again, I find a lot more common with women like going through like having kids, things of that nature. A lot of people don't like rehab their core well after having children, but anyone who has like a little bit more lower abdomen distension and it's like this person's lean, and sometimes yes it is just body fat that we need to lose as well,
Or
but
digestion.
or yeah, digestion, and digestion is a very very common one also that we need to make sure to address. But I've been using this very frequently with, and I have just been programming for most people like, hey, 3 to 4 times a week, just do like 3 rounds, 10 to 20 seconds. Once we get at 20 seconds, we're going to move up to the next progression, like lying, kneeling, standing. Um, and it is interesting how much of a difference it makes. I've even been like doing this myself. Like after I brush my teeth, I'll do a couple rounds of it, like 3, 4 mornings of the week, and it really does like make a visual difference pretty quickly.
Yeah, it's also crazy like if you do these consistently, the difference in doing them in the morning versus doing them at night, or doing them in a build versus doing them in fat loss. You can throughout those different times pull it in quite a bit more or less. But yeah, I think it's a great movement for, and it's also just like simple, right? It's
Hmm.
once you've progressed past the rehab movements that you'll do after birth, like the bird dogs and the dead bugs and all of those. Not that you progress past them, but like once you've done those and you know that there are no lingering issues, then you can add these in and just frequent such a frequent basis. And I think that that frequency is what is the key to them. That's what helps
For
the
sure.
most.
Yeah. Well, I think that's been really interesting for sure. Something I'm doing different here. Anything else you want to add there before we continue?
Nope.
Cool. All right. So from your end, I can jump in if there's nothing that stands out to you, but anything new or different that you've been doing outside of stomach vacuums when it applies to clients, yourself, in terms of ab training?
Um, New and different. I This isn't across the board with everybody, but with some clients, and I have taken this from you, so I'm going to steal your thunder on it, but adding them in at the beginning of the workout as part of the primer is a big one. I Most people have 3 to 4 days of the week that they're lifting. Majority of my clients, I would say a good 80% are at a four day per week frequency. And when you're trying to do like an evenly split program, those things at the end, they're almost they can end up like we don't have time for it, or they're sort of an afterthought, and that would be like abs, calves, those kind of things that I've historically just kind of left out of programming because I would rather somebody be able to get in all of their pulling, all of their pushing, all of their legs versus spending that time that maybe they don't have doing ab training, because it's kind of like working your front delts, where if you're doing pressing movements, they're gonna get hit. If you're
Hmm.
doing a lot of compound lifts, your abs are getting some training, but not through flexion, which is what tends to get left out. So I will program that in the primer sometimes, and that's most of the time whenever somebody's expressed interest in also working their abs a little bit more, or or we also don't have the time to do them at the end, and or we aren't already doing a bunch of specific primers for an issue that they've had crop up. So like if we've got a shoulder issue, that becomes a lot more important for
Yeah.
now. And we'll use that time for abs later on whenever that's not a pressing issue. So yeah, doing like those more flexion based exercises with the primers has been great because we can get in more frequency, and it also doesn't get left off. Like, oh, I'm running out of time, I'm just gonna skip abs.
Yeah. Yeah,
Just
you completely
tempting
stole my
because
thunder there.
yeah, I knew I was going to as soon as you sent it to me first.
No, but I've been doing the same thing, and I think that as a whole, like how the primers are like prepping people for training, that's changed a lot in the last like 5, 6 months, like with
Since we
prescript.
started prescript, yeah.
Yeah, and also working with Kyle like helps has helped me integrate that even more, which is part of why I wanted to work with him. But like thinking through what the goals are there more, I feel like I've been having a lot of fun with those lately because I feel like I've been able to it's like this is both priming us for the session to get more out of the session, but also like this in itself is effective volume and stimulus for driving change, right? So like the I've been doing this for a ton of my clients, right? To bring it back to the earlier point making at the start of this podcast, there's the hey, abs are built in the kitchen. The people always throw that out there first, which yes, we have to get lean enough to be able to see our abs. No matter what, if we have too much body fat covering them, won't really make a difference how much we train them. We can't like spot reduce. Which that also actually that's an aside, but
Yeah, that's a big
we
tangent.
actually potentially could like if we're like bringing more blood flow to that area specifically. Thus, we are. Anyways, that's a different topic, but we probably could to a degree. But anyways, not for someone who's more isn't more advanced. Anyways, with those methods make sense. So like yes, but I think like people applying that across like a lifetime of training, especially as you get to be more intermediate to advanced, I think that really holds people back because what I see with a lot of clients is most people's abs are really underdeveloped. They haven't trained their abs well and haven't trained them enough. I think in part because that like abs are made in the kitchen, especially when it comes to the rectus abdominis, which again is kind of our six pack muscle. Because as you said, like yes, us training like our compound movements, even like a hack squat, we have to brace really hard there on RDL. That will train your core, but it isn't.
It's
We're training the
isometric.
stability component, yes, and it's isometric, right? And that's less of your rectus abdominis. That's more like your TVA, your obliques that are working as well.
It's
It's
also
more
like if you did a wall sit and then you're like, well, I trained my
right,
quads.
right, or like it's kind or like doing a really heavy. I don't know. I don't know if this is a good example actually. Like doing a really heavy or like an RDL for our biceps, right? Where like they're still under
Yeah.
tension to a degree, but with just an isometric hold, unless you're curling your RDL weight, which is a problem in itself. Um, so if we can get really, really well developed apps, like especially to the point where like once we're to the point where, hey, we're past this beginner stage, almost everyone wants apps. Everyone wants like more visible apps. The more well developed apps we can get, the more those will be visible at any given body fat percentage. And I do actually think it does go a long way in getting people closer to the physique that they want. Because a lot of people do like, hey, I really just want to see my abs, and I get leaner and leaner and leaner, and I just like still can't see a big difference there. And it's again comes down to I've been also making all my clients just send me tons of videos of their ab training because it does come down to as well like a lot of people just don't know how to train their abs very well, but also then when it comes to the priming component of that, like if we can our ability to really like flex and extend our spine and just move through our spine is going to be so integral to our upper body training, So I do really like that as a way to kind of prime us for the session. So it's like a lot of my clients, I've had training apps like 3, 4 times a week. And again, I would say those primers as a whole are shorter and more efficient than they used to be. But I've already been seeing, and I'm doing this as well, and I've really, really enjoyed it. I have a few clients where it's like, damn, I feel like already in just a couple of months of us doing this, like, hey, this is a pretty noticeable difference in like how our ab development is looking. So that's for sure like something that I've been doing quite differently. I mean, it might just be like 2 sets, even though like even prior to like on a lower body day, if we're doing an RDL, like I've been using a lot of like cable crunches, a machine crunch. I do generally like something as well. If we have, I like the cable crunch because we can really, really get a lot of spinal flexion there. Even like most machine crunches, we don't have the opportunity to like practice flexing as much as we might. I do like a machine crunch a lot of times too, though. And then like a reverse guard hammer or like a captain's chair leg raise, something of the sort. We're basically doing the same, but it's more so the pelvis is moving closer to the rib cage versus rib cage moving closer to pelvis. But even before like an RDL, I like it like an ab wheel. I've liked my thoughts on it are like I think we talked about this a while back. I don't think that there was like the like never train your abs before you like do a Romanian deadlift or something like that, where I don't think that's actually going to like fatigue us enough to where it's going to hurt our ability to do the movement well. But it does get us in that because that is more so like that movement should almost be more like a plank, right? Where really like that core tension and that bracing that we need, we kind of train it there. Even like kind of brings our lats into play, right? Where like a little bit of back engagement, which we also need in that movement. So I do like that as like a primer. I don't know. So it's been really interesting to kind of like take that different angle on it. But again, also it's, hey, we're getting better developed abs. We look leaner at any given body fat percentage. It's been interesting. Anything to add to that?
No, you're giving me ideas. I haven't used the ab wheel. That's a really good thought as a primer to the RDL.
I'll throw up a video on our Slack. I feel like I say this all the time. I feel like I always just assume somehow that you guys know everything that I'm thinking, and I forget to like. I feel like I have so many different like random things like this that I'm constantly changing, and that I'd be better by sharing it. But I'll drop a video in the Slack, kind of breaking that down. Also, um, anything else that you can think of that you've been doing different lately, or you've changed your mind on in this regard? So, I mean, I
Mm,
would say for sure there, like the importance of it, of direct ad training, in my mind has increased relative to like what I used to program.
yeah, I most frequently would say I use a machine crunch for the simplicity of it. I have a couple people doing the cable crunch, but and this is maybe my own bias because I don't feel like I do them super well. I just see even with working through them for quite a while, it's so easy as you fatigue to let your hips come back. Even if you start out with like it's a really good set, then once we start to fatigue, hips start to drift backwards, even with that intent. I don't know. I feel like me too, like super long femurs, it's almost more difficult in that case because you're just put in such an awkward position on your knees.
I can
But
see
I
that
really like a
actually.
yeah, I really like a machine crunch, and then gar hammers I use all the time. I really
Yeah,
like those too.
gar hammers are probably one of my favorites if people can get them down. I do still really like a machine crunch. I feel like a machine crunch is the easiest
Hmm.
because again, like a lot of people have trained their abs a lot. Very few people have trained their abs well. Where it's typically just people flexing at the hips, right? If you're doing a leg raise, we're not rounding our spine at all. We're just pulling our knees up towards our chest and just bending at the hips, right? Where your
Yeah.
rectus abdominis, your six pack muscles role, or one of its primary functions is pulling our ribcage closer to our spine. So there should be a lot of rounding at the spine. It's like round flexing and extending at the spine is what we want to shorten and stretch that muscle. and that like that machine crunch does make it very easy for people to just get that right away.
Hmm.
Uh, I like the cable crunch. Again, I said I think we can like get a little bit more flexion in that, but also like a lot of times it's just like a couple other cable movements that people can just do right there. So like from an efficiency perspective, so we don't have to bounce around too much. Like if I'm when I'm programming it in the primer, I like that. Um, I had one other thought there, but I completely slipped my mind.
I also really like putting, if somebody has an ab mat, that's great, but like a rolled up yoga mat or something underneath the low back too, because then you can
Oh,
get a
same.
lot more extension. Yeah,
I've
a lot
been
better range
whenever
of
someone
motion.
is just like when someone doesn't have access to cables, again, like I have a couple clients who live on a yacht part of the time and like live and work on a yacht and their gym's very limited where both of them I have to like an ab mat crunch like that where they just roll the yoga mat up, put it under the lower back so we can get more extension at the bottom of
Hmm.
the rep. I do really like that. Oh, the
And
point
an
I was
ab
gonna
mat reverse crunch, which we did at N1.
just
Those are
so
so
hard.
hard.
Yes.
But your hips are so you're at the very edge of the bench, and you have the ab mat or whatever underneath your low back, but then you also let your hips hang off of the end of the bench, and then you're just basically isolating, crunching up from your low abs. It's difficult, but it's a really really good one if you can do it well.
Yeah, I felt like a dumbass doing that one. Cody was like he was over there like, what, what are you doing? Why is this so hard for you? I was like, I'm trying, dude, I'm sorry. Uh, that one is really, really hard though. Uh, but the point I was going to make with the cable crunches, what I have found personally and with clients to be really helpful there, if it is like we're getting into a lot of hip flexion, we're sitting back, is actually being, and there's not a lot of instances where I coach this, but also if you think about it, like it is more of a short overload movement,
Hmm.
right? So similar to like a dumbbell lateral raise or like extension, we don't want to launch too much into that, like on the way up there. But here, like actually having people slow it down through the concentric, like as we're pulling that cable down, really helps in not like rocking back as much. It doesn't have to be like painfully slow, but I've been coaching people more like imagine just like vertebrae by vertebrae, you're kind of able to just crunch
Hmm.
over, like really slowing that down a lot more. And you're able to get a really good stimulus from it in that manner without it being like I'm using a lot of momentum or I'm like rocking my hips back into it as much.
Yeah, I can see that.
From an exercise selection perspective, though, not lats, I don't know why I said lats, abs, uh, core rectus abdominis specifically, isn't one where I find it's a lot different than like your pec training, right? Where there's like, dude, we have like 50 very, very good options here. I find we're typically a lot more like cable crunch, a machine crunch if we have a good machine crunch, a gar hammer, a captain's chair knee raise or leg raise. I like the ab wheel being more of a like kind of a hybrid, like we're still training rectus abdominis. It's kind of like a crunch and like a anti-extension hybrid. Past that, like anything else for abs you really ever find yourself programming?
That ab mat reverse crunch.
Right.
I will use. I just had a thought and then it immediately escapes me. Oh, an LLPT plank I will use sometimes too,
Yeah.
which is just you tuck your tailbone under, which kind of flexes your TVA, and then your elbows are a little bit more out in front of your eyes or nose instead of directly underneath your shoulders. So it just intensifies it where you hold it for less time. I like
Yeah.
those. Of course, for like new moms, this completely all goes out the window, and I use completely different movements. I will also, across the board, use quite a bit of dead bugs. Another good TVA. Oh, you said specifically rectus abdominis, though, didn't you? That's a TVA movement. So all I named there was TVA movements.
Yeah, I
I
would
guess
say
we're all on the same page with the rectus abdominis movements. Then I didn't have anything else.
Yeah, and I think that could be a whole nother topic with
Yeah.
like, hey, bring coming back from pregnancy, or if you never healed, like never took the time to like rehab your core after having a kid. I feel like that could be a completely different topic, but more so, yeah, from the aesthetics perspective, it's kind of like you're like almost like you're like not quad training and like your like LinkedIn bias, like your hack squats, leg presses. Like we have a lot of options there, but with like the like, hey, we basically have the leg extension as a good option for a short quad, or like hamstring, we have a ton of hinging options. But when it comes to like more like short challenge movements, we have like seated leg curl, lying leg curl, and I guess like a kneeling. But like, there's like not that it would make sense for us like now this phase I'm gonna do like a Swiss ball leg curl and now I'm gonna do like a slider leg curl, like
Mm-hmm.
it's there are a couple options that seem to be quite superior to most everything else. I know I used to back in the day, which when I was a lot worse at programming, like every phase I'm gonna change out this person's ab training, like their ab exercise. And again, like the rectus abdominis stuff, depending on the equipment we have, that is like one of the things people are typically the worst at. It takes a
Yeah.
long time for us to master. So definitely not one we want to change out frequently, especially once it's like this person just got this down. Anything else on ab training you want to talk through before we wrap it up?
I've been thinking about the best ab machine I've ever used was at Destination Dallas. And you like hook your ankles into it
Is
and
it the
have
flex one?
I don't know the brand, but you crunch down and lift from your lower abs and
I was just
you
gonna
have
say
a
that.
big extension in your back at the top of it. And the very first weight selection plate was so hard, which my abs are a very weak point, so that's probably the big me problem. But it was such a heavy machine, but it was the best ab machine I've ever used.
I'll
You
send
guys
you
have that
this
one?
after. I've actually never tried it. I just look at, love the, I'm just nerd out over this stuff. I bet it's the Flex Fitness Crunch. I almost bought
It
one on the
might be.
Facebook Marketplace,
We're
but I
gonna
was
go
like,
back soon, so I'll use it again. Take a picture of it.
the Prime one, that gym we were at, that blackout gym we were at in Lisbon, I used, and the Prime one is actually pretty solid as well.
We
They have
have
a
that at my
couple though.
gym.
It's not the one you have. I didn't like that one very much.
Oh, okay.
Or
I was
wait,
gonna
you're at the
say,
new. Well, not. I guess I don't know about your new gym.
I think so. We do have the Prime Crunch machine. I've only kind of played on it because I don't have it programmed, but maybe I'll start using that as part of my warm up, and then I'll
Cool.
report back.
I'll send you that after this, and we'll see if it's the same one.
Yeah,
I feel compelled to buy that again. Anyways, what my caffeine starts hitting me in the morning. I feel like I always just need to just buy random shit.
need to shop.
Anyways, yeah. um, that's what we have here all for today. Just kind of a casual chat, but it has been. I don't know. This has been interesting. I've been having a lot of fun with it. My own training, clients as well. So hopefully this is helpful. If you guys enjoy the show, do us a huge favor. Leave us a 5-star rating and review. Really, that does make a big difference. So please, if you enjoy the show, love if you take a couple minutes out of your day to do so. If there you have like anything you dislike about it, as always, DM it to Natalie. Um, if you want to apply to work with us, hit the link in the show notes, and we will catch you guys next time.